Kjell Hallbing, 1934 to 2004, was a Norwegian author. Hallbing is best known under the pseudonym Louis Masterson. He also used the pseudonyms Ward Cameron, Leo Manning, and Lee Morgan. Hallbing wrote the book series about the Western hero Morgan Kane, a total of 83 books in the period 1966 to 1978, all published by the publishing house Blad Companiet. In total, the 83 Morgan Kane books have sold over 10 million copies in Norway. Hallbing wrote almost as many books about other heroes and themes. In total, he wrote about 150 books. Writing career and writing method. Kjell Hallbing was a prolific and disciplined author with a unique ability to create entertaining and engaging stories. His writing method and approach to writing were the key to his success. Inspiration from the Western genre. Hallbing was a big fan of Western movies and books, especially the author Louis L.M.O. He was inspired to create his own Western hero, Morgan Kane, who combined classic Western elements with a psychological depth that appealed to readers. A fast and efficient writing style, Hallbing was known for typing quickly and efficiently. He was able to complete a Morgan Kane book in just a few weeks, which allowed him to publish several books a year. His writing style was simple, direct, and focused on action, making the books easy to read and exciting. A research and authenticity. Although the books were fiction, Hallbing emphasized creating a believable and authentic Western world. He researched historical details, geography, and weapons to give the stories a sense of realism. Of psychological depth, Morgan Kane was not a typical Western hero. Hallbing gave a character a complex personality with inner conflicts, traumas, and moral dilemmas. This made Kane more human and relatable to readers. Kjell Hallbing, who worked as a bank clerk, had a great passion for writing. His first book manuscript, The Rifle That Sings, was unfortunately not accepted by the publishers in 1960. But already the following year, he had his debut book, You Back Intact, published under his own name by National Forlegate. At the same time, his first Western book, Portrait of a Gunslinger, was published by Green Publishers. In the beginning, Hallbing also wrote several short stories and war novels. Between 1962 and 1965, he alternately used the pseudonyms Ward Cameron, Leo Manning, and Lee Morgan. During this period, he collaborated mainly with Green Publishers. Kjell Hallbing, the author behind the popular Morgan Kane series, was one of Norway's most prolific authors. He wrote about 150 books, and it is estimated that 1 in 3 Norwegians has read at least one of them. Hallbing grew up in Bærum and started working in a bank after school. He had always loved writing, but it was only when he had to learn to type at work that his writing career really started. His first novel was rejected, but his debut book, You Back Intact, was published in 1961. However, it was not until 1966, when he got a contract with Blad Companiet, that he really became a success. Then he started writing the books about Morgan Kane, a series that became very popular. The Morgan Kane books were more realistic than other Westerns at the time. Kane was a complex character with both good and bad sides. He was withdrawn, cynical, weak for women and alcohol, and had an active sexual life. Hallbing also placed him in different environments across the United States and in other countries to create variety in the stories. Hallbing was fond of hunting and the outdoors, which was reflected in his books. He was also very knowledgeable about weapons. He had a great imagination and wrote books steadily. In addition to novels, he also wrote short stories and articles about the Wild West. Eventually, he quit his job at the bank to become a full-time writer. He continued to write about Morgan Kane, but also created other heroes such as Jesse Rawlins and Owen Metzger. He also started his own publishing house and tried his hand as an editor for a humor magazine. In the 1970s, the press began to take an interest in Hallbing and Morgan Kane. Some thought that the books were reactionary and misogynistic, but everyone agreed that Hallbing was a skilled storyteller. Morgan Kane became a phenomenon, and cartoons, belt buckles, T-shirts, and even candy were made with his name. Several of the books were also released as audiobooks, and songs were made about Morgan Kane and other characters from the books. There were also plans to make a film, but it never came to fruition. After writing almost one book a month for many years, Hallbing began to scale back on his publications in the mid-1970s. He spent more time writing and made sure that the books were historically and geographically correct. In 1978, he started the series Dear Blito, which was about Morgan Kane's son Paco Galen. This series also became very popular. Hallbing also wrote 2 non-fiction books about the Mexican Revolution, which was a background for the Diablito books. In 1982, the last Morgan Kane novel, The Last Hunt, was published. By then, he had depicted Kane's life from his birth in 1855 until he was forced to leave Mexico in the early 1900s. Hallbing was gradually accepted in more serious literary circles as well. He had books published by Gil Dendel and the Norwegian Book Club. In the 1980s, Hallbing wrote fewer and fewer books. However, in 1991 he returned with the series El Diablo, in which Morgan Kane meets his son Paco. As the turn of the millennium approached, around 15 million books by Hallbing have been sold in Europe, and they are still being published in new editions. Hallbing has been translated into many languages, and he has had a great impact on both Norwegian literature and the view of the Wild West. The Morgan Kane series is Hallbing's biggest literary contribution, and one of Norway's most successful book series ever. A Morgan Kane character, Morgan Kane is a lawman and mercenary operating in the Wild West in the 1800s. He is a lonely and traumatized figure, often fleeing from his own past. Kane is both an anti-hero and a hero, with a strong sense of justice, but also a dark side that makes him a fascinating figure. Of themes, the series explores themes such as loneliness, revenge, justice, and the battle between good and evil. Hallbing used the Western genre as a framework to explore human emotions and moral issues. Publications. The first Morgan Kane book, Death is a Lonely Hunter, was published in 1966. The series lasted for over 30 years, and the last book, Morgan Kane's End, was published in 1997. The books were translated into several languages and sold millions of copies worldwide. Morgan Kane is a series of exciting books about a tough cowboy in the Wild West. The author, Kjell Hallbing, used the pseudonym Louis Masterson when he wrote these books. They were published by Black Companion. This series is incredibly popular in Norway, and it is considered one of the biggest successes in Norwegian entertainment literature. There are a total of 83 books in the series, and in Norway alone, about 11 million copies have been sold. In addition, some of the books are being translated and sold in 10 other countries, which means that the total sales are around 22 million books. Especially in Sweden and Finland, the Morgan Kane books have been popular. The very first book in the series, Without Mercy, was published in 1966. Comics have also been made based on some of the stories about Morgan Kane. In addition to his own series, Morgan Kane also has an important role in another series called El Diablo. In this series, which came out in the 1990s, Hallbing wrote 4 books in which Morgan Kane and his son, Paco Galen, are the main characters. These books are called El Diablo, 1991, The Ash Enemy, 1994, The Gate of Fear, 1996, and The Eye of the Storm, 1997, which was the last book Hallbing wrote. In 2016, all 83 Morgan Kane books were republished by Alla Forlag. In 1965, Kjell Hallbing published the book Kill for the Law. It was later rewritten and republished as book number 22 in the popular Morgan Kane series in 1968. The same year, the book Morgan Kane, Texas Ranger, was also published, written under the name Louis Masterson. That's when the character Morgan Kane really became popular, and he was the one who would make Hallbing famous. Westerns and movies were still popular in Norway at this time, but interest in the United States was declining. That meant fewer new stories. The magazine company, which published the magazine Western, therefore needed Norwegian writers. They found Kjell Hallbing, who worked in a bank, but who also liked to write. Together, they created one of Norway's biggest successes in exciting entertainment literature. Hallbing used the name Louis Masterson because readers were used to American authors. The magazine company continued to publish Morgan Kane books, and they sold very well. Kjell Hallbing was able to quit the bank and become a full-time writer. To earn even more money, he also wrote books about another Western hero, Clay Allison, under the name Leo Manning. These books were a little more exciting and sexy than the others. Kjell Hallbing, as Louis Masterson, became the first Norwegian author to sell better than foreign authors in Norway. He became rich and even started his own publishing company. Morgan Kane is a well-known Western hero from a series of books. His parents were Irish immigrants who died when he was a child. He grew up to be a tough gunslinger. Already at the age of 16, he killed his first husband. Later, he became a soldier and took part in battles against Native Americans, including at Little Bighorn, where the famous General Custer died. After this, he became part of a criminal gang. He traveled around and went by the name El Gringo. He learned a lot from a Mexican bandit named Coyote, but they fell out. Kane also got together with a woman named Mariella, and that didn't make matters any better. Later, he joined the Texas Rangers, a kind of police force. He also worked as a U.S. Marshal, a kind of police or sheriff's position. He married, but his wife was killed. Kane continued to travel around and had many different jobs. He was even in Alaska during the gold rush. He eventually became ill and old. He died in Mexico around 1912, about 57 years old. His son became a famous bullfighter. Paco Galen is one of the heroes of two exciting book series, Diablito and El Diablo. The books are written by Kjell Hallbing under the name Louis Masterson. In the first series, Diablito, we meet the young Paco, who is Morgan Kane's unknown son. We follow him from the time he is an orphan street child in Mexico until he tries to become a famous bullfighter. Much of the action takes place during the Mexican Revolution around 1910. In the second series, El Diablo, Paco has grown up and is a skilled bullfighter. Here he meets his father, Morgan Kane, and the two have exciting adventures together. The three books about Diablito became very popular when they came out in 1978 and 1979. The series about El Diablo came later, in the 1990s, and consists of 4 books. Paco was nicknamed Diablito, which means little devil, because he was born with black hair and special eyes. His father is a famous Western hero Morgan Kane, although no one knows for sure at first. Paco grows up in a monastery and on the streets, where he learns to fend for himself. He becomes fascinated by bullfighting and dreams of becoming a great matador. He must steal and work on the streets to survive, but he never gives up on his dream. As an adult, Paco becomes known as El Diablo. He becomes a famous bullfighter and meets his father, Morgan Kane. Together they experience exciting things, and Paco becomes a hero in Mexico. Many of Morgan Kane's experiences have also been turned into comics. All the stories were drawn by Ernst Olsen Meister, who used the pseudonym Ernst Vevel Olsen. The first story was first published as a series in the Norwegian magazine Western, starting at issue 1 in 1974. This story was called Billy Goulden's Revenge, and the following year it was printed in the first comic book about Morgan Kane, which was titled El Gringo. A total of 6 comic book albums about Morgan Kane have been published, and 3 of these have been printed in 2 editions. In 1976, the American Duke Kelly came to Norway with plans to make a Morgan Kane film. However, the film plans were not realized. Instead, a photo novel was made for the magazine Western, where Duke Kelly played Morgan Kane, and Kjell Hallbing the evil villain. Finn Arnsen played a poor gold digger who was murdered by Hallbing, and the model Randy Clementson played a woman in distress. From 2009 to 2017, Ryan Week had plans to make a film and eventually a film series based on the books about Morgan Kane. Tens of millions of kroner were invested in a scandalous project that never resulted in a film. The portrait of Morgan Kane that is used on all the Kane books, short stories, posters, circulars, and other material is made by the Spanish cartoonist Neuquit. Although the portrait is not specially drawn for the series, there is no doubt that this is Morgan Kane. Kjell Hallbing was a private person who rarely appeared in public. He lived a quiet life and focused on his writing. Of family, Hallbing was married to Eli Hallbing, and together they had 2 children. The family lived in Vela and Stvold, where Hallbing spent much of his life. Interests. Hallbing was an avid outdoorsman and loved nature. He also had an interest in weapons and Western culture, which was expressed in his books. Personality. Hallbing was described as a humble and modest person, despite his immense success as a writer. He often avoided media attention and preferred to let the books speak for themselves. Kjell Hallbing is one of Norway's best-selling authors ever, and the Morgan Kane series is one of the most successful book series in Norwegian history. Millions of copies sold. The Morgan Kane book sold over 20 million copies in Norway alone, which is unique for a Norwegian author. The series was also translated into several languages, including Swedish, Danish, Finnish, and German. Cultural phenomenon. Morgan Kane became a cultural phenomenon in Norway, especially in the 1970s and 1980s. The books were read by a wide audience, from youth to adults, and Kane became an iconic figure in Norwegian popular culture. Reissues and collections. Following Hallbing's death, the Morgan Kane books have been republished in new editions and collections, introducing the series to new generations of readers. Kjell Hallbing's legacy as an author is enormous. Not only did he create one of Norway's most famous literary figures, but he also helped popularize the Western genre in Norway and beyond. A pioneer of popular literature, Hallbing showed that it was possible to create successful and engaging literature that appealed to a wide audience. He paved the way for other Norwegian writers in popular literature. Kane's popularity endures. Morgan Kane remains an iconic figure in Norwegian literature, and his books continue to sell well. Hallbing's ability to create a character that resonates with readers across multiple generations is a testament to his talent as a writer. Cultural heritage. Hallbing's contribution to Norwegian culture is indisputable. He created not only entertainment, but also a literary treasure that continues to inspire and delight readers.